Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Quacken Smite League podcast. I am Red Sniper 23. Joining me is the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Neptune. How are you doing?
Hello. I, you know, I have a glass of Dr. Pepper. It could be worse.
Oh, it definitely could be worse. So we have had an interesting week in the QSL. Had a few things here and there. Had a makeup game. Had some other bouncing around. But at least we got 7 games in this week, in week 4 done. So we're going to talk about all those. We're also going to talk about what we predict for week 5. We're not going to be doing one of the predictions for week 5 because it's already happened. So don't worry about that. We're not going to deal with that yet. But we're going to review all of week 4, and then we're going to talk about what we expect to see in week 5 of the QSL. All right, so Neptune, let's get into it right away. Let's go into week number 4. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who are wondering about the pickups or drops or something like that, there really wasn't anything major to talk about. It's been pretty stable for the most part. But just a reminder to all of those listening that rosters will lock in week 6. So that's Saturday. The rosters will lock. We will put an announcement out there for you. But uh, yeah, this one is very interesting. We are going to start off with the week 4 game of Reapers versus the King's Dukes. King's Dukes taking that one 2-1. Uh, I think you were a part of this one, Neptune. What were your thoughts on that one?
I wasn't the one casting it, but I had to watch it as it's Poe's team, so and there was a lot of yelling from the opposite room about her team when that game was happening. But I heard Gingy did phenomenal into Sandman.
Mm. That was kind of the expected big matchup between those two teams. Um, Sandman Sam, is known to be one of the top solos, and how is Gingy going to be able to stack up against that? Gingy came in a little late last season, played in the minors, did very well, but was kind of this. Okay, we have a little bit of fresh blood in here. How's he gonna work? Playing in majors so far, he hasn't looked too bad. But up against Sandman Sam, I agree. I think he looked real solid.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that was the major takeaway from that game. It was basically the solo matchup that you wanted to see. How did Gingy stack up against Sandman? And I think Gingy stacked up really nicely. If he continues on his way in the solo lane, I think he could end up being a top competitor.
mhm. I do not disagree with that statement at all. Um, yeah, things have kind of switched around in that soul lane. People that were kind of expected to be absolutely phenomenal have kind of been so-so or average, and people that you were expecting to step up really haven't. So, interestingly enough, we have really someone who, personally, at the beginning of the season, I thought Gingy might have been, maybe towards the bottom of the solo laners, and yet we see him stepping up and going toe to toe with the likes of Sandman Sam, who I was expecting to be one of the best solo laners. So, but I don't think that was quite the entire name of the game in that one, because that carry lane of the Dukes with Clay City and Hot G was just oh man, that one was pretty interesting to watch. Um, I don't know. Your thoughts on you know that's one of the thing about the Reapers is they really haven't had a stable roster so far. Poyo was their carry to begin with. Then Inori goes to carry, and Poyo goes into the jungle. Poyo couldn't be there. I think it was last week, and so Inori goes into the jungle. And Inori on this Osiris just dove time and time and time again. And that just, I mean, it's sad to say it was kind of this. All right, man, come on, come on. Just get the kill, do get the flank, do something. And he was getting the flanks and he was getting the kills, but there was no like re-engagement from the team. I kind of felt that the Reapers were, I don't know if it outboxed is kind of the way, but in the team fight, they baited the team fight. And Nori would dive in, and then you kind of saw the Reapers go, okay, Inori, we need you to take this over. And I don't know, Cyrus, it's not like he's this gigantic burst damage kind of thing. I'm going to make them all vulnerable, and I need the follow up. And I was waiting for the follow up, and it just never materialized, I guess you could say. But I could fully understand where Poe was coming from with the yelling. But the Reapers did manage to take a game off the King's Dukes and kind of, well, I'm not going to say spoil, but definitely put a damper on some of the predictions that were made. But other than that, I think let's move on to what I would consider the best game of the week and probably one of the best sets this season so far. The Pittsburgh Phantoms playing the Phenoms, and Phenoms taking this one 2-1.
That is surprising considering what everyone has said about the Phenoms roster. It is this unbeatable super team that can only stack up against the King's Duke. But for the Phantoms to take one game away from them in itself against the top two team is surprising.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't.
Absolutely. I mean, the interesting thing about the Phantoms is that up until that point, like, you looked at them week one and they 2-0'd the Obsidian Mages, your team. But then in week two, they 2-0 the Archon Dragons, looking real good. And then in week three, they were supposed to play Zeus Juice, but that one was rescheduled. So coming off sort of a what was that?
I thought it was the Dukes that the Phenoms had to play. Week 3.
Uh, the Dukes. No, I was talking about the Phantoms.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
I was very confused for a second because it was like, wait.
No, but the Phantoms had not dropped a game all season to that point.
Yeah.
And the Phenoms had not dropped a game all season to that point. So you got two unbeatens going into week 4, Phenoms and Phantoms, and that just Phenoms and Phantoms drove me nuts because I already get tongue-tied, and when they're that close, you're trying to cast the game, and you're like, it's the yellow team, not the blue team. It's the Phantoms. It's not the Phenoms. It's the Phantoms. But I thought that was such a good game. It was such a good slugging match. The Phantoms ended up taking game 1, I believe it was, and when they took game 1, it was sort of this absolute slogfest. Every objective was fought for. Every team fight was 5v5, pushing on things, working with things, trying to get stuff to work well, and it just you kind of you kind of look at it and go, the Phantoms have a real shot at beating the Phenoms. And then the Phenoms kind of went, whoa, wait a second, we need to take this team seriously. And the second game was an absolute monster of a game. I think the second game was something like 40 minutes or something like that. I'm trying to remember exactly. Let's see, when was that one played? That one was played. Oh, that was the oh no. That was when I remember that was when we recorded the last match, and holy cow, that was the 3 hour slog we went through beforehand. Um, and yeah, that was an epic game back and forth. Finally, the Phenoms pull out game number 3, but everything that I thought would have been considered easy for the Phenoms wasn't. And everything that I expected to be easy for the Phenoms wasn't. Their engagements, the team fights, the everything about the crispness of the game, it wasn't there early on, and it took a while for it to get there. Um, and I mean, kudos to the Phantoms for pulling out that one game, but they had a real shot at taking number 2 as well. So that was such a good game. I if you haven't seen it, go back on the Twitch and look at and just watch. Such a good game. Um, but I've belabored that point a little bit too much. So let's move on to the third and the last of the majors games we're going to talk about. Zeus Juice versus Boone game. Kind of the, at least for a couple people, it was an upset, and for a couple people, it was an absolute surprise. Um, but I think I actually had this one predicted. Let me double check here. Yes, I actually had this one predicted between Zeus Juice and Booney Gang. Oh, and Jer Bear actually had the same thing, but we had the outcome correct. We didn't have the game score correct. But Zeus Juice taking Booney Gang 2-0 in week number 4. Thoughts on that one, Neptune?
You know,
A man of many words. Um, but I mean, this game was an interesting one because we were seeing Zeus Juice come out swinging. Um, if I remember this one correctly, and of course, I'm trying to remember this from, you know, last week. But
hello on that roster.
oh, sorry. Um, but this one where Justin Rapid Carnation, and then of course Justin Who, which is Reluctance. They just they were on point this game, and going up against Booney Gang, I was expecting Castler to be able to beat Rye very easily. I was expecting Subkiller to do Subkiller things. You know, give him a warrior. I don't care if he's a support. Just give him a warrior and let him run. Um, you know, if things get real bad, take somebody else, you know, take Destiny or take a Quarren or whatever, and throw him in support, and then throw Subkiller over into his solo lane, and you know, just let Subkiller do Subkiller things. And Subkiller never really did Subkiller things, and it was kind of this. I was kind of taken aback because we knew how dominant he was last season. I think the surprise though was the switch up on Booney Gang. Castler was in the mid lane, and Drunk Diplomat was in the carry role. And because of that, you saw Rye and Diplo duking it out regularly, and Rye, at least in game 1, totally got the better of Drunk Diplomat, and I was shocked at that point. I thought Justin and Castler played very even in the mid lane. I thought Justin had a little bit of more familiarity with the mid role, and I think that's probably what pushed him a little ahead. Um, but I, I never really saw a huge difference. I just saw this slow, steady, um, 5-man death ball just start to work its way forward over and over again to the point where there was nothing you could do. There was literally nothing you could do about it. Um, and I mean, at that point, you just kind of go kudos to Zeus Juice and go, yeah. I mean, that's it's just kind of what worked. Um, but
Well,
whoop, you're talking to Poe or are you talking to us?
I'm just thinking like you didn't put respect on Rye.
I didn't, and that was to my detriment. I didn't put respect on Rye. Um, Even when I did my initial tier list, I'm thinking I really haven't seen him much in ADC. Like I saw him in jungle, I saw him, playing other roles, but I never really saw a lot of him playing ADC. Now I've seen him play ADC, and now it's like, oh, this is what I can expect out of Rye. This is what I can expect this team to do. And it's going to work. And it's not just going to work, but it's something you got to look out for when you play this team. Um, which I was not expecting. I was just flat out not expecting. So kudos to Rye for changing my mind on that one. That being said, why don't we switch over into the minors? And let's start with probably the most painful game for you. The Arc Lords defeating the Obsidian Knights 2-0 in that one. So as an org owner, you do have a bit of insight and maybe a little bit of bias behind this, but what were your thoughts on this game, particularly between the Arc Lords and the Obsidian Knights?
Going into it, I thought, okay, they'll play like a team like they have been every game. We went into this being an undefeated minors team, you know? But then in the game, it looks like a ranked game. Nobody trusted nobody.
I think I
And
even
I don't
said that during the game.
I said that about 3 times in that cast. But
No offense to anybody, by the way.
no, uh, and so I went and going and watching a team that you've seen go and excel in the team fighting phase to when you get to the team fighting phase, they drop the ball. It was very much like, what happened? Props to the Arc Lords, though. No disrespect to them at all. Like, I'm just saying what the Obsidian Knights did wrong. The Arc Lords played phenomenally. They capitalized on the facts that my team was playing like a ranked game.
Yeah, I I know I casted that game. That was one of the 4 games I did cast this week. Um, but that game was particularly like you started scratching your head because that was a perfect storm. The Arc Lords played one of what I thought was one of their best games so far this season, and I thought for the Obsidian Knights it was probably one of their worst games this season. And it was just this perfect storm of what you didn't want to see happen and what you did want to see happen, and they both just hit on the same night. And so the Arc Lords just rolled, and it was not like in the 1v1 fights, there was nothing that you could genuinely say this person and this person had huge separation, or this person and this person had a massive difference. It was a small, slow difference until you got to the team fight phase, and that's when things opened up. The coordination from the Arc Lords really demonstrated that they are working together as a team. Now, that being said, let's also put things in proper perspective. Who I would consider as the carry of your team, which is Peaceful, was not there. Like, just straight up not there.
And I can give you some I can actually give everyone insider knowledge on that. Peaceful actually last minute had some problems, so he couldn't show up, which is why we had our sub come and play. And yeah,
And I mean, to be quite frank, your sub did what a sub was supposed to do. It's not going to be a instantaneous one for one trade. There's a reason why they're a sub. They're a fill in player that was not part of the starting lineup for a reason. But when they still were able to be there, you didn't see that it was a huge detriment in the skill department. I think it was in the coordination department that it really started to hurt the Knights in that game.
see, no fault to AWSM. We did put him in. It wasn't even his main role that we threw him in. He doesn't play mid. He's a like solo jungle flex,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of just threw him into mid. He didn't like. He performed well.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't disappointed by it. It's just I think the team is used to Peaceful's over aggression that seems to throw everyone off balance.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Um, and if I remember correctly, I mean Cyber was doing really well, but Honkler kind of stood out a little bit in that game. And I know Bramble stepped up a bit for the Archon Dragons, but I thought it was more of a team thing for the Arc Lords than it was for. Or sorry, I said Archon Dragons for the Arc Lords rather than the Obsidian Knights. I thought it was such a good team performance from the Arc Lords. Um, I think there was a triple kill and maybe a quad in that game. Not 100% certain. But even that being said, it was done as a cleanup to a team fight. It was not like, oh man, it was such a massive outplay. So, um, again, it was kudos to the entire team, to the setup for that team and the continuation on that team. So, but yeah, let's move along a little bit here and let's get into the other one, the King's Knights, the other knights of the minor leagues, taking on the Ferrymen, and the King's Knights take a 2-0 victory on that one. I'm sure Poe was probably screaming during that too.
She does get very involved when her team plays. I will give her props that she enjoys watching them play too. Like I think the Ferryman and I think the Knights are both solid rosters. King's Knights showing up a little bit more. I think everyone had them rated very low.
Let me see. I'm gonna double check that actually. Where did I have King's Knights set up on this one? I had them 5. So I had King's Knights 5. I had Ferryman 2 actually. Um, Mainly due to Raptor, Louis, and a couple others on the in the early side of the season. Obviously, things have switched around since then, um, but even then, it was a surprise to see like Omega Bulldog and Achilles JC were toe to toe, and Omega Bulldog actually still maintains that I will still maintain he is probably one of the best players on that roster. Um, I thought he played exceptional that game. Um, the real issue came when you had Boy Greatness playing against Zombie Crusher in mid, and it was snowy in support, setting things up time and time again. Um, it was just a overall better performance from the Knights than from the Ferrymen. And even now that I'm thinking about it, I know that Rush had a pop off game on one of them too. So again, it was just kind of there were bright spots for the Ferrymen, but there was never something that you could point out and
Capitalize
say,
on.
this is the reason why they won, or this is the reason why they should have won. Um, But with the King's Court Knights, you just kind of looked at it and go, they were just the better put together team that night. Um, and I honestly, I think both of them are going to be
In
playoff
the playoffs.
teams. Sorry, what was that?
I said they're both going to end up in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I expect both of them to be in the playoffs. I expect both of them to do considerably well. I it's going to be interesting to see who is going to be able to advance in playoffs. I think the Knights may have a more put together package, and I think they would have the ability to potentially do a little bit more. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes on as we are getting closer and closer to playoffs. Um, and how that is going to change things coming up. All right, so let's move along and talk about the next game we have coming up. Um, it is going to be let's yeah. Let's talk about Charlotte Fury and Little Noms. This is one that I was actually unable to cast. I was there. I actually watched this one later. Oh boy. Um, I don't know if you were available on this one. I'm not 100% certain. Um, if you were there for this one, but
I don't know if I was. I'll be real with you,
let's.
Chief.
Yeah. Oh no, this was Herc. That's right.
Yep.
Hercules was the caster on this one, and oh boy, the Little Noms came out swinging. It had been a couple weeks for them. They had to use a reschedule. Someone else also used a reschedule. They couldn't like quite get together. They've played. I think they played 2 games in the last like 4 days. Um, Actually, no, I take that back. They played one on Saturday, one on Sunday, and I know they have another one coming up. So they're trying to catch up in their schedule. But this one here was that week 4, week 5, we're gonna do this one, then we're gonna do that one, and they showed why they are still unbeaten in this league. In fact, the only team that has beaten them, the Chosen Guans, did so because the Little Nom showed up 15 minutes late to a game. I mean, I I, I am not 100% certain. Even watching the games, I am still not 100% certain how you beat the Little Noms with another minor league team.
Don't you put disrespect on me like that.
I
Don't you disrespect me like that ever again, Red. Coming for
uh
that title.
hey man, I'm calling it as I see it right now. And if you
Don't blame
look
the king,
across the
Zeus.
board, I mean just I'm looking across the board at what Little Noms have right now. And I mean the weakest link and if you call it a weak link, their weakest link, I guess you could say, maybe is Mud a big deal in solo? Maybe is Peg Leg as carry? I mean that's it's still not a weak link. I mean, Pabs is still excellent as support. I think he even won MVP honors in that game. Um, Giannis in jungle is fine, and Josh the landlord in mid is still making a name for himself in the mid lane and in minors. Um, it's just crazy to see this team when they have all 5 starters, all of them working together. It's like they've played not just this season but a previous season together. And yeah, when Mutta came in after Satan left, there was kind of a little bit of a hiccup, but there was enough time to work out the hiccups that they were still able to put a decent product on the field. And it was not, I mean, we had seen the Fury battle the Arc Lords previously and have such a good game. But you have Charlotte Fury and the Little Noms, and you just see Little Noms, yep, 2-0. Boom, done. It's like, oh, okay, here we go. Um, oh. Oh well, we'll deal with that as it comes up. Okay. I don't know why my computer's doing that. Sorry for the weird noises, but all right. So let's move on to our last one here. Um, and we have the Chosen Guans and the Booney Boys. This one here, holy cow. As tight as the Phantoms and Phenoms games was in the majors, the Guans and Booney Boys game in the minors was so fun to watch. So fun to watch. Um, trying to remember, I think you might have been with me on that. Oh no, it was me and Chaos on that one. But the
Yeah.
Chosen Guans come out with the win 2-1 against the Booney Boys. And we kind of said the same thing the last time we saw the Chosen Guans play, which was you gotta protect Lin in that mid lane. Caracol Chipotle cannot be exposed, and they just gank her over and over and over again. And what did the Chosen Guans do? In game one, they put her on a Poseidon of all things, not the safest god in the world.
Stop cracking at your toes. You're safe for 2 seconds.
Exactly, and that's exactly what they needed to do. She just kept throwing Kraken after Kraken after Kraken, and was throwing out, what she needed to do to survive, and it was working. It was working, and they ended up winning the first game pretty handily once it came to the mid and late game. In the lanes, things were quite even. You saw the Booney Boys start to gain a little bit of a lead here and there. I think they even stole the first Gold Fury. But after that, they realized, okay, we need to make sure that we have objectives secure. We need to make sure that we have all these things together to make sure that we're going to win this one. And game one goes to the Guans. Game two, all of the objectives secure and the things that they were working on in game one, the Chosen Guans kind of lost in game two. And the Booney Boys just had this snowball effect. There was no real big blip one way or another. It was all this slow, inevitable Booney Boys advantage. I think at like 13 or 14 minutes, the Booney Boys had like a 12k gold advantage. It was completely out of hand at that point. Um, and I think Lynn was on a Scylla, I think it was, which she did not look comfortable on, which was kind of weird for me because I expected her to perform pretty well on a Scylla. But game three went right back to that Poseidon. They went back to the stuff that worked in game one. There were some bans that came out that were effective. And the Chosen Guans take game three as well, and they take the set 2-1 against Booney Boys. It was a really fun game to watch. If you want weird steals, weird kills, you know, what, you know, you scratch your head going, where in the world did that come from? That is a game that is just exciting to watch. So I would go back and watch. If you could only watch two games this week and you have some time, watch Phantoms and Phenoms and watch Guans and Booney Boys. I think those are two games that are well worth your time to watch. Um, that being said, Mr. Neptune, do you have anything to say on that?
Aside from the fact that you had my majors roster wrong.
Oh, I do have your majors roster wrong. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had to.
I know there's some things
Yeah.
happened in the last couple of weeks. Yeah, I do know that there's been some shakeups in some of the rosters. Um, Scarab, which was your captain and your carry at that time, um, but had to bow out for real life issues. I think he's going on deployment, or he's training for deployment, and so he bows out. Dragon now comes in as your captain, and you picked up Wabux as your solo, which I don't think he's played yet. This week will be his first one, right?
Yeah, we did some scrims against the Boone gang. He did Wabux things is what we're classifying it now.
Okay, so we got you got sub killer things, we've got peaceful things, we got duck things. Now we've got Wabux things. Okay,
See
so
when this game happens for this week 5 game, you'll see Wabux.
yeah. Speaking of which, I'm oh yeah, that's right. It's expected to play Thursday the 12th. So that one that one should be pretty fun to watch. I'm expecting it. But anyway, we'll get to that soon. We'll get to that soon. Um, but anything on Chosen Guans and Booney Boys? I know you weren't in the booth for that one. But anything left on the last of the minors?
Mm, I'm just waiting for week 5 to really kind of finalize things because like week 5 is basically determining who goes to the playoffs at this point for
Yeah,
the minor.
that's yeah. Oh man. Yeah, you will see there's a lot of like tiebreaker games, best games, worst games, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. It really will separate a lot of the teams into two tiers, who's going to be pretty safe for playoffs and who's going to kind of be struggling to get into playoffs. So, but I think that's a good transition. Let's start talking about week 5 games. How about that? And so let's talk about week 5. Probably one of the I would say one of the bigger games for the week, the Reapers versus the Archon Dragons. Um, Dragons are 0-2 right now, but they have yet to field their their most expected player in NMR. Um, how do you see the Reapers squaring up against the Archon Dragons this week?
The Reapers versus the Archon Dragons. The Archon Dragons is a team that kind of got stacked overnight. I will say this: they picked up NMR. They have who do they have? NMR, Tantal. Trying to place the entire roster.
Yeah, they have Boomhev, NMR,
Olay.
Olhea, Half Hero, Tantalus, and if you didn't think that was enough, they have Joe from New York on the bench.
Which, looking at this roster, you have Half Hero, which if you put Half Hero in a carry role, like in the carry, like if you had swapped Tantalus and Half Hero would be a menace. But I still think their roster is phenomenal as it sits right now. We haven't seen them be able to pull up a game yet, so it'll be very much a this is what we can do from here on out. Watch out for us type of game.
Hmm.
But the thing I'm most excited for is this Boom of NMR combo. We know Olea can play the mid lane. We know what he can do. But it's really what Boomhev and NMR can do with this new majors. We
Yeah,
saw NMR absolutely control the jungle last season. It was not your jungle, it was not my jungle, it was his jungle.
yeah, and it really came down to I remember when All In played Dharmic last year or last season, and you had the battle of NMR playing Davies, and it was the top two junglers that season playing off against each other, and you just kind of going, so who's going to get the upper hand? And you saw ganks, you saw objective steals, and you saw farm steal, and you saw absolutely everything under the sun that a jungler could do to try and carry his team. Both of these junglers did with flying colors. Um, so we're looking at
This
Reapers and Dragons. So other than NMR in the jungle going up against Inori,
Mhm.
Who do you think is that your number one matchup, or is there another matchup that you're kind of looking at going, this one right here could be awesome?
I'm also looking at like I think the Juke got moved to solo lane, so I'm thinking it's gonna be a Juke versus Boomhev, and I do want to see what Boomhev can do in the solo lane.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see what Juke can do in the solo lane. So I'm curious about who's gonna win that matchup as well.
I'm really interested to see what Olhea is going to do up against Gingy. Gingy is not a mid player, he's a solo player primarily, but he's kind of their best option right now with the mid lane. So Gingy and Olhea in that mid lane is going to be really interesting to watch.
Now, this being said, though, you do have like as long as you have a mid laner who won't feed the other mid laner, it's not a problem.
Hmm.
And that's what a lot of teams like. You don't need to win lane. You just don't need to feed the lane.
Yeah. Yep. Oh man.
This is
Oh, you're
expert
preaching to the
level
choir.
advice.
Yeah, right. So Reapers and Archon Dragons, what is your prediction? Who you got winning this one, and what is your score?
I think it's gonna be. It's tough because if the Reapers show up on one hand, it's gonna be the Reapers taking that game. But if the Archon Dragons actually show up for the game, it'll also be an interesting game. So I kind of want to say it's gonna be a. If an like I think it's gonna come down to how well Poyo and Inori and well, it's gonna actually come down to how well Poyo and Juke can perform in the team fight phase for the Reapers, and it's gonna come completely down to for the Archon Dragons. I think to how far behind or ahead Juke is compared to Boomhev, and how
Mm,
ahead NMR is compared to Inori.
okay. Okay.
But I
So
think it's gonna be a 2-1 Reapers.
2-1 Reapers. Ooh. Okay. Um. This is something that's so crushing for me because it's like I expected a lot out of the Dragons. Like when the NMR pickup happened, I'm thinking in the back of my mind, wow, this is such a great guy for them to pick up. He fits into their needs and their play style right away. But it's so hard for them. They've had such chaos on their roster. They haven't really been able to work together, to play together. They really haven't done much in the way of scrimming as a five man. Um, even if they bring in their sub, you kind of look at it and go, is there is there so much dissent in between them that maybe it doesn't work out as well? Um, and so on this one, I'm gonna have to agree with you and go 2-1 to the Reapers on this one. It's really, really tough. I kind of want to go 2-1 to the Dragons or even 2-0 to the Dragons because I know NMR can have that huge impact. I just don't see it working through yet. And I think yet is going to be the key work. They do have a lot of reschedules coming up. So we'll see if they're able to kind of continue that, but I'm going to go 2-1 to the Reapers. All right. So next we have the let me make sure I have the right game pulled up here. It is going to be Zeus Juice versus Obsidian Mages. So, your game coming up here Zeus Juice and Obsidian Mages. Zeus Juice bouncing back after a win. Obsidian Mages kind of looking to get back into winning ways. Who do you. Well, I shouldn't even ask who do you have because I know who you have. I know which pony you're back in this race. Um, so let me just
Hmm,
ask you this one. Real simple question.
what's that?
So you've got Zeus Juice roster and the Obsidian Mages roster, your roster. What are the two biggest matchups you're looking for this week in week 5?
I'm looking at this Margie Wallbucks lane for one. I this is gonna be Wabbux's first game. I want to see how he performs, what he's gonna do. I want to see how he stacks up against Margiela, see how well he stacks up compared to a lot of other people. But this is gonna be Dragon's first game in his actual main role of the mid lane, so I want to see how he's gonna stack up against Justin. Actually, my whole roster is not the same thing as it started the season, minus Oreo.
Right. No, actually, that's not even true because Oreo, you had mid lane too.
I don't even
So,
have the same roster. It's basically a whole new
oh,
roster.
that's right. Because well, no, Desi is your sub. So Desi and
Yeah.
Oreo are the two you have the same.
No, Owen I started the game with, but Oreo was my solo laner. Or not Oreo. Owen was the solo laner to start the season.
Okay.
Then we picked up Wabux, moved Owen to support because we figured, okay, if we're picking up Wabux, who's a solo lane, we're gonna put Owen in support.
Mm-hmm.
And Owen seems like in that scrim we had, Owen seemed to mesh with Oreo. I think it's just getting these team synergy down pat to a T.
Okay. Um. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Oreo Rye matchup. I want to see what Oreo's able to do against Rye. And I'm not going to ask for your prediction since I kind of know which horse you're pulling for. But I will give my prediction here. Um, I think the two biggest questions that are going to come down in this one is how does Wallbucks deal with Margiela? Because I think that's going to be one of the big questions in this matchup. But it's also going to be how does Owen set things up as opposed to how does Olive, Rapid Carnation, set things up for his team? So we know Ryan Oreo is going to be a good matchup. Margiela and Wabux is going to be a good matchup, but I'm looking more for the setup rather than the actual damage. We know the damage is going to come through, but how is Olive and how is Owen going to set up for their respective teams? I think that's going to be a big key into how this game goes forward and who's going to win on this one. So at the end of the day, mages versus Zeus Juice. Who am I favoring in this one? Well, there's only really one way I can go in this one, to be honest. And I'm actually going to go 2-0 to the mages. And it's a spicy take because I know Zeus Juice has some really good players and has some really good things that they could do. But I really like if Wallbucks really does bring his A game, I think that the mages will be able to take this one from what I've seen. So I see the reverse happening. The mages will win, or I see the reverse from week 4 happening. So week 5, last majors matchup we're going to talk about because again the Kings, Dukes, and the Phantoms are playing actually right now at the time of recording. So we're not going to actually do that one, but Boone Gang and Phenoms. Is there really a lot to talk about in this one?
Uh, Booney Gang is kind of still like it's kind of on the back leg right now. They need to find something that works for them. I think they've changed their roster yet again to Subkiller and Solo and Destiny and support.
Yeah, they did make that switch. I think they started last game, or yeah, I think it was last game against Zeus Juice. They actually started with that. They put Destiny as support and Subkiller as solo.
So maybe this works out for them. Maybe they can pull a game with the team comp they have, but based upon the Phenoms roster, and each of the Phenoms roster is respectively good in their own roles, but
Mm-hmm.
who I think there is a single carry on that team, and I think it's Omar.
Really?
I based upon the games I've watched, the Phenoms, all that, Omar has just set his team up, gotten the kills, achieved so much for his team.
And I think that is part of what makes the Phenom so successful. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge to Booty Gang this week too, because Aquarin has not looked particularly well in the last couple weeks. Um, Up against a Nori, got bodied a couple times, got real hard run at a couple times. So I see Aquarin basically, this is the challenge to Aquarin in week 5. You see Omar, that's your challenge. If you want to stand on top of the QSL, you got to beat that man right there. So use this as a gauge, use this as a challenge. Beat that man in the jungle and see what your team can do around you. See what what sub killer is going to be able to do against Budgie Dude. I think those are probably one of the top 2, 3, even 4 solo laners. I definitely like what Sub and Budgie are both bring to the table. So we'll see how that matchup is going to work. But yeah, I think the big one is going to be the jungle. Aquarin against Omar is going to really tell how this set's going to go.
Say this, no disrespect to Armor Wolf. It's just Armor Wolf knows, like, once Armor Wolf is ahead, he knows how to stay ahead. So it's not going to be a problem of going to constantly gank Omar. Or not
Yeah,
Omar, Armor.
armor. Yeah.
So I think, like I said, it's not about winning lane. It's not about losing. It's keeping your lane as a win,
Mm-hmm.
not a loss.
Yep.
What is our next matchup that we got to talk about, Red?
Well, first of all, Boone Gang and Phenoms. Who do you have? What's your prediction?
It's a 2-0 for the Phenoms.
2-0 for Phenoms. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going the same way. I'm going 2-0 Phenoms on that one. So next one, we're going to shift our gears to the minors. We are going to talk about the Arc Lords and the Ferrymen. And this one is going to be what I believe is one of the huge tests for the Ferrymen. They've been in a recent slump. They've had a little bit of a backpedal, face a couple of the better teams in the QSL, in the minors. And now they're going up against Arc Lords, who just got off of 2-0ing the Obsidian Knights. And the Obsidian Knights are no slouch. They're no pushover. In fact, they were in first place going into week 5. And now at the end of week 4, it's like, whoa, okay, maybe we pumped the brakes and maybe we were a little too hasty with the Arc Lords. Maybe there's some legitimacy to them.
Yeah, I think as much as, I have faith in the Arc Lords, but if the Ferrymen show up, the Arc Lords have that consistency, but the Ferrymen, if they do show up like they did, especially against the Obsidian Knights, when they showed up for that game, it was a phenomenal set. I think the Ferrymen can beat the Arc Lords. The Arc Lords excel at capitalizing on small mistakes, and that's what pushes them ahead. So I think the Ferrymen, if they show up to the game, play their A game, and really play the game like how they want to play the game, I think they beat the Arc Lords.
So what is your prediction, Ferrymen v Arc Lords?
I think it's a 2-1 for the Ferrymen. Close.
2-1
It's going
for
to
the
be a
Ferrymen.
close game.
Okay. I actually oh man, that is such a tough one for me because I think that the Arc Lords are starting to hit their stride a little bit. And if they play the Ferrymen at full strength, if both teams are at full strength and both teams are coming out swinging, I think the Arc Lords have more team synergy than the Ferrymen do. If you were talking about individual skill, if you were talking about just the guys and gals going into this whole thing and just, pure mechanics, on paper, the Ferrymen win 2-1. But after what I saw last week, what they did to the Obsidian Knights, how the team fight worked, the Arc Lords, I don't think they're going to 2-0, but I think it's going to go 2-1 to Arc Lords this time. I think the Ferrymen are going to continue the slide just a little bit, which is going to be tough for them. I mean, they've got a couple of games that are must win coming up, but I think that the Arc Lords are just going to squeeze this one out. And even then, I really don't want to say it because I think the Ferrymen are still a phenomenal team. I think if you put these two teams against each other in the playoffs, this could be one of the most exciting matches in the playoffs. And I actually think it's going to be one of the most exciting matches this week in majors or minors. I think this one's going to be a really good game. So again, I'm going 2-1 to the Arc Lords. And it pains me to say that. Um, so next up we have the King's Knights and the Charlotte Fury.
Ooh. Actually, that's the game going on right now because it's the Dukes. I think is a little later on.
Oh, okay, okay. Dukes is later on. All right.
Yeah, I'm currently watching this as we do this.
Okay. So King's Knights and Charlotte Fury. You're obviously watching the game, so I don't know how I have not watched any of the games so far. I have no idea how it's going. Um, just on paper, if I'm just looking on paper, I mean, you've got Telly and Carry, PK and Jungle, Zero and Mid, Yellowgen and support for the Fury, and for the King's Court Knights, you've got Snowy, Zombie Crusher, Rush. I like the King's Court Knights. I do. Um, as as close as this game may be, I
Think it's a
kind of want to
2-0.
go 2-0 to the Knights.
I would have to agree with you.
So, and it's no offense to the Fury. I think they're still a good team that's going to vie for playoffs. I would not put them in the bottom two, but I think that when it comes against the King's Knights, I think the King's Knights capabilities just they're very talented, and because of that, I'm going to go with the King's Knights. Um, so let's talk about the non-biased one first, and then we'll deal with yours. So Booney Boys and Little Noms.
Uh,
I this has the potential. If Booney Boys pull this off, this could be the upset of like the century, in my mind. Um, the Booney Boys have had so much chaos in their ranks with how the season has gone, what their roster has done, 500 other things going on there. It's so hard for them to, or for me to say, this is exactly the path that they can take in order to win, not just a game, but a set. And even if I was going to say, you know, a set or a game, just win a game, uh, it's hard for me to even say that. So I'm going 2-0 to the Little Noms. I think the mechanic skill, I think the talent is just too much for the Booney Boys. I think they play way too well as a team, the Little Noms, to give that to the Booney Boys.
did they make another roster change? Like, I swear they change roles, like, make, like, just anything at this point. Like,
Booney Boys have made roster moves. Reporter support is now their support. Donlin is now playing carry. He was in mid. Bacon Crumbs is now the sub, whereas I believe I forget where he was starting. I think he might have been the support.
he
But
was the support.
Yeah, so Uncle Fable is in solo and Sphinx is in the jungle. Um,
It's the only two that haven't changed. The rest, I, I can hardly ever keep track of what this team is going through. Like, you've had Shearing, who's
yeah,
put himself as the mid, the support, the carry, the sub. Where are you playing?
yeah, and it's real tough because like last season, you looked at what Shearing was able to do in season two, and it's like, oh, throw him in a carry role. He's gonna pop off. That's what he does. Play the stupid on her. Whatever. He's just had so much on his shoulders that he hasn't just been able to play. I I think more often than not, he is probably trying to be the shot caller on that team, and I don't think that should be his primary role. I think his primary role should be I need to get ahead. I need to focus on my mechanics and let somebody else shot call so that we can work this game together to win. Um, I think his mechanical skill is excellent. I just think it's the coordination that's going to let the Booney Boys down in this week. And I think it's going to go 2-0 to the Little Noms on that front. Um, They could surprise us. I'm not going to say that they can't, but I I just don't see how the little Noms, other than showing up 15 minutes late, are going to drop a game to the Booney Boys.
I will say this, maybe, yeah, as much as I don't like, I don't think someone in the carry role should shot call a game. You're too focused on farming and 1v1ing your laner to try to get ahead of them that you probably shouldn't be shot calling for objectives. Leave that to the jungle or the support.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would very heavily agree with that. So what is your? You already said 2-0, correct?
Yes, 2-0 for that game for the
Yeah,
little knobs.
2-0 to the Noms. Okay, last one, week 5, just cresting over an hour now into the podcast. Chosen Guans and Obsidian Knights. Oh boy.
Just go off for rosters here. Let's take all the bias out and just go off of rosters.
Just go off of rosters. We're really gonna do this, huh? We're really gonna do this.
I will not leak any information from my team of what we're doing in that game. I
I
will
will
just
I
go
will
strictly
ask
based off the
this.
roster.
I will ask this. Are you coming with your starters, or are you gonna have to have Awesome come in?
If Awesome is playing, he's playing in his main role, which
Okay.
will look a lot like Moose playing in solo. So that is what, if that will happen, will be what
Okay.
happens.
All right.
That,
So at least I have a basis to go off of here than just a shot in the dark. But
so there you
okay,
go.
so Chosen Guans, you've got Ianized in solo, Dummy Slick in jungle, Cackerel Chipotle, Lin in mid, Ban Herc as the carry, and Amish in support. With Kamazats was taken as the sub. Um Amish was popping off last week during one of those games. I remember that. Ban Herc did really well with the follow up. Was it an Uller game? I forget exactly what it was, but Ban Herc just was phenomenal in one of them. Dummy Slick played well. I know Dummy Slick, Amish, and Ban Herc did have standout performances. Um, but if Peaceful is playing, and if Goody Proctor can protect Peaceful enough that Peaceful can just feed and farm and get to be this raid boss, I think the Obsidian Knights could easily take this one 2-0. That being said, I think the real issue, the huge issue, is going to be how does Ionized play against you guys? I think that's the one area where Chosen Guans can look at just the standard setup, just what just looking at the rosters. I think Ionized and Ban Herc, if either one of them start to pop off, I think they take at least a game from the Knights. It could be more. They could take the whole thing just to because the mental could go down on the Knights. But if Ionized or Ban Herc have a career game, not even a career game, if they just have an awesome game, the Guans could shock everybody and take it. That being said, this is such a tough one for me. I'm still gonna go 2-0 to the Obsidian Knights.
I will say this: it's not just the peaceful show. We do have Sam, but remember, he's the bottom two support. Is what we have deduced because I don't know. I don't want an Afro support showing up in my game because he wants to troll. That's right, peace. That's right, Sam. I'll call you out.
Yeah, I mean, the Afro support can work, but there's just so much anti-heal now in the game. There's so many ways you can get around it now in the game that the Afro support is just kind of, if you have people that are paying attention, it's not going to be viable. Yes, the immunity, the essentially getting an Aegis every 60 seconds is really, really nice. But are you going to be able to do that effectively over and over and over again? And if you're off on your timing, it doesn't matter what happens, you're all going to die. It's just the way it works. Um, so that being said, I mean, we know what horse you're backing in that one. Um, but do you think it's going to be 2-0 or do you think it's going to be 2-1?
Uh, If if the Knights are playing like the way they should be playing in these games, it is a 2-0 for they have to play like a team. They have to trust each other. When they don't trust each other, somehow my team goes into a ranked match.
Yeah, and that is going to be a huge, huge question. Do they go back into ranked mode for this week? I will say if they go into ranked mode, if they do that, I think the Guans take it from them. I think they do, just flat out. Um, I think there's talent on the Knights, but if they don't play as a team, no, sorry, ain't happening. You can farm up on somebody all you want. You can bully and you can push and you can do whatever, but if you don't play as a team and if you don't have the objectives secure and if you don't coordinate things properly, you might as well just give them your Titan now. Um, so we'll see how that works out at the end of week 5. But Obsidian Knights and the Chosen Guans, that is going to be the end of our podcast for this week. Holy cow. So just 2 of us, kind of missing. We're missing Cooter, missing Skeet, missing Jer. I know Jerbear and Cooter are actually, I believe, casting the game tonight, so that was one of the reasons why they couldn't be here. But I did get the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Neptune, with me. I want to thank you for being my special guest this evening. Um, is there anything else you would like to say before we sign off?
I just want to say that I'm gonna cut week 5 real quick and say week 6. I'm coming for the little Noms.
Ooh, ooh, them's fighting words. Them's fighting words.
They're fighting words if my team actually plays like a team.
If my team actually plays like a team, that's a big if. That is always a big if every week, isn't it? Oh man.
I don't know
Anyway,
why.
anyway, thank you guys for listening, for tuning in and not tuning out. We appreciate every view, every download, every like, every just every time you guys listen. We want to make sure that you guys are kept up to date with what's going on. Some interesting analysis of how things are going in the Quack and Smite League, and maybe some behind the scenes little tidbits from here and there. But anyway, I have been Red Sniper 23. I have been joined by my special guest, Neptune, and we are going to say good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever time of day it is you're listening. And we will see you next week on the QSL podcast. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.